After the siege at Fort Sumter, there was a while before the next battle. However, the Union was pressured to fight by politicians. These politicians refused to believe that the Union Army was still too green for battle. Abraham Lincoln even encouraged military conflict by saying, "You are green, it is true, but they are green also. You are all green alike." Pressured into battle, the Union Army moved out of Washington in order to capture Richmond. Lincoln's goal was a swift and order victory at the First Battle of Bull Run in order to institute the idea of a swift and order civil war. In order to do so, they had to cross Bull Run Creek and prevent Confederates from getting reinforcements from Manassas. The Union forces came up with a complex plan that was ultimately too much for the Green troops. The Confederate troops held the railroad station at Manassas. The Union wanted to obtain the junction quickly and prevent the movement of Confederate troops. Obtaining Manassas was also the first step into getting into Early July 21st, 1861, General McDowell sent his troops to Blackburn's Forge in order to take down Confederate troops. After realizing that the Confederates were overpowered and the Union Army was undermanned, McDowell sent his troops to the right flank of Stone Bridge in order to take over Confederate troops. The Battle of Blackburn Forge. After being pushed off by the Confederate Army, troops move up to Stone Forge and flank to the left. After flanking Stone Bridge, the Union troops cross Bull Run and meet at Buck Hill, where they are met with Confederate troops. The Union troops overpower the Confederates and push them back across enemy lines. The battle at Buck Hill. Union troops outpower Confederate troops and send one flank to the right while the other moves straight forward to take over Buck Hill. Confederate troops retreat all the way back atop Henry Hill and are led by Stonewall Jackson. After being pushed off Buck Hill by the Union Army, the Confederates retreat to Henry Hill and draw troops from Blackburn Forge and from Buck Hill, and eventually, under the lead of Stonewall Jackson, flank to the left of the Union Army and overtake the Union Army.
I am General Stonewall Jackson. I held Union troops off Henry Hill.
Battle of Henry Hill, led by General Stonewall Jackson. Union troops push forward towards Henry Hill and flank to the right. Union troops flank to the right, led by General Irvin McDowell. Troops continue to push up Henry Hill, but eventually they're taken over and retreat back towards Buck Hill, pushed there by Confederate troops. Irvin McDowell, what would you say your plan was for the Union troops going into the battle?
My plan going into the battle was, while my army of roughly 30,000 men were moving west, I intended to make an attack against the Bull Run line with two columns, while a third swung south around the Confederates' right flank to cut their line of retreat to Richmond. I also ordered Patterson to advance up the valley to make sure that Johnston would not be able to help the Bull Run line. My hope would be for this battle to be an indicator that the Civil War would end in a Union victory very quickly.
How did the actual outcome of the battle turn out to be different than your original plan?
Obviously, what happened was not what I wanted to happen. I became frustrated when trying to turn the Confederate right, so I altered my plan and began an effort to attack the enemy's left. This called for Tyler's division to advance west along the Wereton Turnpike and conduct an assault across the Stone Bridge over Bull Run. However, the Confederates learned of my new plan and sent a group to attack my forces that were trying to attack the left flank. The two forces met at Matthews Hill. I then ordered more forces to the battle lines, as did the Confederates. We came out on top, however, because of our greater number of men and cannons. We forced the rebels to retreat to Henry's Hill, which is to the east of Matthews Hill.
What ultimately led to your downfall?
I blamed Thomas Jackson and his reinforcements of fresh men and cannons to the aid of the Confederates in our late reinforcements that came to us. The rebels continually were reinforced with fresh troops from Johnston's army, and they gradually gained the upper hand and pushed us back. Our reinforcements did eventually arrive, but it was a little too late. The Confederates flanked us and quickly pushed us down the hill. I ordered a retreat to cross back over Studley Ford and Stonebridge and toward Washington.
I devised much of the plans for Bull Run, and after I was alerted that our left flank was weakening during the battle, I rallied my troops to hold their ground and continue to fight.
What was your original plan for battle?
My original plan was to envelop McDowell with an attack on the right flank.
How did the outcome of the battle differ from your original plan?
What ended up happening was that after we held our left flank at Henry Hill, we launched a counterattack with reinforcements from Shenandoah, and this ended up routing the Union forces.
General P.G.T. Beauregard, what do you attribute your success to?
I attribute my success in this battle to the willpower of the Confederate Army and their ability to rally after realizing that their left flank was reached by the Union soldiers, and to overcome that and hold their ground on top of Henry Hill and eventually launch a successful counterattack that drove the Union forces back across Bull Run Creek.
General P.G.T. Beauregard, what led to your demise?
I did not die during the war. After the war, I worked for the Louisiana Lottery Board and their railroad service, and I eventually died at the age of 74 of cardiovascular disease.
At this point in time, the Battle of Bull Run ended up becoming the bloodiest and most death-ridden battle in American history. The Union Army, led by General Irvin McDowell, had a total casualty count nearing 2,700, while the Confederate troops, which were led by P.G.T. Beauregard, totaled nearly 2,000 casualties. With a total of 4,700 total casualties in one singular day of battle, not only was the Union Army shaken from the amount of casualties that they suffered that day, the demoralized group marched back to Washington in a demoralizing fashion after a painstaking loss. Not only did this demoralize the Union Army, but it instilled the idea in both armies that this war was not going to be ended in one single battle. Neither army proved to be a pushover, and this would result in mass amounts of death and suffering over time. This proved to the South that they were in it for the long run, and they were not going to be annihilated by the Union Army. The Second Battle of Bull Run proved to be the deciding battle in the Civil War campaign waged between the Union and Confederate armies in Northern Virginia in 1862. As a large Union force commanded by John Pope waited for George McClellan's Army of the Potomac in anticipation of a combined offensive, Confederate General Robert E. Lee decided to strike first. Lee sent half of his army of Northern Virginia to hit the Federal supply base at Manassas. Led by Stonewall Jackson, hero of the First Battle of Bull Run, only 13 months earlier, the rebels seized supplies and burned the depot, then established hidden positions in the woods. On August 29th, Pope's Federals clashed with Jackson's men, who held their ground with heavy losses on both sides. The following day, after Lee's army arrived, 28,000 rebels, led by James Longstreet, launched a counterattack, forcing Pope to withdraw his battered army towards Washington that night. The impact of the battle. A wave of despair rolled over the North with news of the battle's outcome, and the morale in the army sank to new depths. Accusations flew among Pope McLean, McDowell, and Porter about who was to blame for the defeat. Those in power pushed for McClellan's dismissal, but as McClellan had the unwavering support of the soldiers and Lincoln needed a speedy reorganization of Union forces, he left McClellan in command.